Edgar Allan, a novel, Chapter 11. When I told my father what had happened to me with Tommy Didford, he said that he was proud of me. But what he really wondered was what, if anything, was being said to MN in her school. He didn't even ask if I knew. Of course, I didn't. MN wasn't talking to me any more than anyone else. She went to school each day, very quiet, and came back the same way, never saying a word about EA or what was happening. She paid no more attention to him than before. I was willing to bet that Snooty Flynn and Fats Browning, among others, had a few things to say, and I can guess what MN answered. I'm not this smart ordinarily. I just remember what happened one afternoon before. For the next few days, things kept changing. Everything, that is, except a man for all seasons, Thomas More. I had come across him because of a movie someone made, and I read a really great play about how More stood up to Henry VIII and wouldn't approve publicly of what the king was doing just to help him. It was scary because what More really did was just keeping his mouth shut, never saying a word to anyone or any one way or the other. And it was the silence that got him and sent him to the Tower of London a prisoner. I was glad I had read it. Mother and father, meanwhile, had their serious talks in the studies mostly at night when we were all upstairs. They had a record-breaking thorough, though, one afternoon when two men who belonged to our church came by to talk to father. I don't think I ever heard mother and father argue, but I suspect they came pretty close to it that afternoon. I don't know exactly what the men said to father, but afterwards, after the serious talk between him and mother, I had a feeling that things were getting kind of tense. My mother walked out of the study and her face was set in a way that I had never seen before. She looked determined about something and sort of angry and sad at the same time. I looked into the study and found father just sitting there, looking out the back window of our yard and rocking. I stood there a minute or so, thinking he wouldn't sense I was there, and turned around, but he didn't, so I waited another minute. "Hello," I said. Father swung around in his chair. "Hello, Michael," he said. "Feel like walking a little?" Father looked at me a minute strangely, I had thought, and then nodded. He got up, put his pipe in his pocket, and turned towards me. He was smiling. "You are a good son to have," he told me. I didn't say anything. There was not much you can say when someone says something nice about you. Thanks sort of sounded silly. In the late afternoon, and the shadow from the eucalyptus and palm trees reached and passed us far from the other side of the street as we walked. We didn't talk right away. Father had one hand in his pocket and held his unlit pipe in the other. I was Prince Philip again, but without the throne room. After a while, I thought maybe if I started him off, Father would talk by himself later. So I started. "What did those men want who came this afternoon?" I asked. Father turned and looked at me for a moment, sort of studying me. "You're a big fellow for your age," he said. "In your thinking, I mean. That's another thing you can't say much to." "What those men wanted," said Father, "was to know whether we were going to keep Edgar Allan or not. What else would we do with him, I wanted to know." "Well, Michael," Father said, "EA isn't really yet ours yet. Remember the testing period." "Well, we're still in that. We have time before the final decision is made by us and by the adoption agency." That's silly, I said quickly. They can see EA is happy with us. They would want to take him away from us? They wouldn't unless we wanted them to. You mean if we wanted to give him back, we could? That's right, said Father. If we wanted to, we could give EA back. Well, we don't, do we? My stomach hurt. For the first time, I was frightened for EA. No, Father said, we don't. But sometimes there are things we have to do we don't really want to. Maybe giving EA back is one of those. What will the men from the church do if we give him back? Nothing. It's what they'll do if we don't, he said. Father didn't talk for a while. So I didn't. I just waited for him to begin again. What did the men from the church say? What the men from the church said, Michael, he said after a very long time, was that if we decided to keep Edgar Allen, the church might ask me to leave. Oh, I said, what did you tell them? Nothing. Nothing? No, I listened. I let them tell me how they felt about EA and the church and the town we live in. Is that why Mother is mad? I asked, because of the men. No, Michael, your mother is angry because I wouldn't say anything to them. I thought about this a moment. What did she want you to say? That we were definitely going to keep Edgar Allen. But that would have meant you wouldn't have been a minister here anymore, I said. Perhaps now, not. Your mother thinks not. What do you think? I don't know yet. You know, Michael, sometimes what seems like a good idea, something that is good and honest and worthwhile, sometimes you run into a lot of trouble for hanging on to it. I waited, scared with my hand on my belt. Sometimes, Father went on, you have to make a choice between the idea and the real world that surrounds the idea. A choice, say, between one person and 6, like our family. And you know what I thought about then? Marry Nell. And was thankful that Father had said what he had said to me instead of to her. When Mary Nell had the advantage, she never lets it go. And right after that, after I had an idea about Mary Nell, I had another idea. What about the whole man Father used to talk about? A whole man, it seemed to me, would know exactly what to do if something like this happened, and what to say. But Father didn't, and I couldn't understand why. I had trouble getting to sleep that night.